Most people think dementia begins with forgetfulness, but in many real cases, it begins with fury, not just simple frustration, but explosive, irrational rage. What if your reserved mother suddenly snaps at strangers in public? What if your gentle father, out of nowhere, accuses you of betrayal over nothing? Here's what most families don't realize. These furious outbursts aren't mood swings. They're early warning signs that the brain is starting to break down. In this video, you'll discover 7 disturbing outbursts reported by families, all witnessed before their loved one was diagnosed. If someone you care about has started to erupt like this, don't brush it off. You might only have a small window to act before the damage becomes irreversible. Let's begin. Number 1. Threatening to call the police on family. Carol, 65, had always been warm but private. So when she accused her son of hovering too much during a simple visit, the family brushed it off as stress. But it was only the beginning. She soon refused to let her son into the house, claiming he was there to snoop. Then came the breaking point. During a conversation about a dentist appointment, Carol suddenly stood up trembling and shouted, "I don't trust you. I'm calling the police." No one had raised their voice. No one had done anything threatening. But she was locked in panic, eyes wide, convinced she was under attack. The family finally sought help after Carol called 911 on her boyfriend, saying he looked the same, but she knew he was an imposter. A neurologist later confirmed Alzheimer's, likely progressing for over a year before anyone suspected. Experts warn that when the frontal lobes begin to break down, emotional control, impulse regulation, and social judgment are among the first functions to erode. This makes normal situations feel threatening, even from loved ones. What looks like paranoia often triggers intense defensive rage, and long before memory fades, these furious outbursts may be the brain's earliest cry for help. Number 2. Exploding at strangers in public. Pat, 73, had always been polite to everyone, waiters, clerks, even telemarketers and solicitors. But about 2 years before his vascular dementia diagnosis, he snapped at a barista for putting too much foam on his cappuccino. His wife was embarrassed, but thought he was just having a rough morning. Then came another scene. At the grocery store, Pat exploded at the cashier for charging twice, even though the receipt was correct. He cursed, slammed his cart, and stormed out while other shoppers stared in silence. The breaking point came when he lashed out at the nurse he'd known for over a decade during a routine checkup. That finally pushed his wife to schedule a cognitive evaluation, and the result confirmed what they were afraid to admit. Studies show that dementia often disrupts the brain's ability to process social context and manage emotional impulses. This makes crowded or unfamiliar places feel overwhelming, triggering sudden outbursts, even when nothing threatening is happening. This is often the brain's failing response to minor stress, especially in public, where stimulation is high and control is harder to maintain. For many families, these angry scenes become the first visible cracks in a loved one's behavior. Number 3. Yelling at objects that don't work. Nancy had always been calm and methodical, but soon after she turned 81, something shifted. One morning, she screamed at the toaster for deliberately burning her bread. Her son figured she was just having a bad day. But it didn't stop there. She began shouting at the television, slamming the remote, and blaming it for changing channels on its own. Once she even yelled at the refrigerator, accusing it of messing with her food. The breaking point came when a neighbor overheard her in the garage, swearing at the washing machine for talking back. Rattled by what he was hearing, her son finally scheduled a full evaluation. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's just about a year after the behavior first appeared. Findings suggest that dementia can affect how the brain interprets cause and effect. When problem-solving areas begin to break down, simple malfunctions can trigger confusion, misdirected anger, and verbal outbursts. A person may no longer understand how or why a device works, but still feel certain it's betraying them. To others, it may seem like a tantrum, but to the brain in decline, it's a logical response to a world that no longer makes sense. That's nearly half of everyone over 55, and most won't even know it's starting until it's too late. Because dementia doesn't wait for memory loss. It starts with strange behaviors, outbursts, or eerie shifts in how someone sees the world. If you've noticed something that didn't feel right, don't ignore. It could be the beginning of something much deeper. Let's keep going. Number 4. Storming off during normal conversations. 77-year-old Tim had always been steady and level-headed, but roughly 2 years before his Lewy body dementia diagnosis, that started to change. One afternoon, when his son mentioned wanting to help sell the old family car, Tim stood up, left the room, and slammed the door without saying a word. When his son followed, Tim refused to talk and later accused him of pressuring him on purpose. Over the next few months, it got worse. If someone suggested going shopping or offered to help with yard work, he'd suddenly go silent, storm out muttering, and refuse to speak at all. The final moment came when he walked out of his granddaughter's birthday lunch, accusing the family of planning something behind his back. That's when his wife finally called his doctor for help. Neurologists explain that dementia can distort emotional processing long before memory is affected. The brain becomes hypersensitive to perceived criticism or loss of control, even in normal conversations. This leads to emotional shutdown, irritability, and sometimes silent rage. It's not defiance. It's the brain's way of avoiding situations it no longer fully understands. Number 5. Becoming furious over shared belongings. Joanna was well known for being generous, but about a year and a half before she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at age 75, her attitude suddenly changed. One day, her daughter picked up a paper towel to clean a spill, and Joanna snapped, "That's mine, don't touch it." At first, they laughed it off, but soon she began hiding mugs in her room, accusing others of stealing her things, and yelling if someone sat in her dining chair. The breaking point came when she had a full meltdown over a mixing bowl that had been moved to a different shelf, screaming that, "Someone's trying to erase me." That outburst finally led the family to realize something was deeply wrong, and later that month, tests confirmed what they feared. They never stopped regretting that they didn't act sooner. A major study revealed that early dementia often distorts a person's sense of ownership and identity. The brain may begin to confuse memories with the present or interpret shared objects as deeply personal. This creates an overwhelming need to protect even ordinary items, leading to angry outbursts when others move, borrow, or touch them. What seems irrational is often the brain clinging to control in a world that's starting to feel unfamiliar. Number 6. Blaming the TV or news for personal attacks. Josh, 68, enjoyed the TV news every day, flipping between channels to keep up with the world. But nearly 3 years before he was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, something changed. He began yelling at the TV, not just about politics, but directly at the anchors. "He's talking about me," he shouted, pointing at the screen. His wife tried to calm him, but he refused to believe it was just a coincidence. Over time, the behavior grew stranger. He once claimed the station was spying on him, sending messages through the headlines. The worst moment came when he glared at the screen and said, "They know where I live now," before pulling the plug and refusing to turn it back on. That was the day his wife started writing things down and called the neurologist the next morning. Research shows that as dementia progresses, the brain may lose the ability to separate reality from interpretation. When processing fast-paced stimuli like news, facial recognition, voice tone, and narrative cues may all be misread. This leads to paranoia, misbeliefs, and emotional outbursts aimed at screens, devices, or unseen watchers. While it may seem bizarre, it's often one of the first signs the brain is struggling to make sense of the world. Number 7. Anger that ends in tears or confusion. Miranda, 74, had always been sweet and caring, so her family was stunned when she suddenly yelled at a neighbor for parking too close to her mailbox. Then one morning, she accused her sister of hiding the vacuum cleaner, even though Miranda had moved it herself. But what disturbed them most wasn't just the rage, it was what came after. Minutes later, Miranda broke down in tears, asking, "Why did I say that?" It kept happening. She would explode over nothing, then look confused and ashamed. Once, after slamming a door and calling her husband a stranger, she collapsed in the hallway and sobbed. That pattern of fury, confusion, and guilt finally pushed her daughter to act. After a neurological workup, Miranda was diagnosed with mixed dementia nearly 2 years after the first signs began. Neuroscientists indicate that when emotional outbursts are followed by confusion or regret, it often points to early disruption in the brain's frontal and temporal lobes. These areas govern impulse control and emotional regulation, two functions that fade early in many types of dementia. The result is a frightening loop. The brain triggers a reaction, but the person can't explain it, control it, or remember why it happened. For families, it's one of the most painful signs that something deeper is wrong. These outbursts aren't just personality changes. They're early warnings, flashes of a brain in distress, long before memory ever fades. And if you've seen even one of these moments in someone you love, you need to know what else to watch for. Because anger is just the beginning.
And there you have it. What are your thoughts? Next, dive into this video for more essential tips to transform your health and help you thrive. You're going to love it. Thanks for watching Healthy End, and we'll see you there.